You look at the glittering skylines of Shanghai or Shenzhen, packed with billionaires and private startups, and then you see a government that snaps into a rigid grid of absolute top-down control. We routinely misinterpret how this country operates because we try to analyze it using standard post-1949 Marxist theory or Western democratic values. Neither of those frameworks actually fits. The government does not enforce its strict policies out of an arbitrary desire for villainy. Statecraft here is driven by deep, unresolved institutional trauma. To understand how China governs today, we have to recognize that almost every controversial modern policy is a direct trauma response, meticulously designed to prevent the catastrophic horrors of the past from ever happening again. For 2,500 years, China has functioned as a civilization defined by a cycle of total fracture and violent rebuilding. This timeline graphic compares the history of Western conflicts to Chinese conflicts. While Western history has its share of wars, the Chinese timeline is defined by the extreme frequency of total, catastrophic state collapse. Living through that constant churn of destruction forced ancient thinkers to find a way to survive. They developed philosophies like legalism. Legalism is a political philosophy that discards moral considerations in favor of strict, centralized rule and severe penalties to enforce absolute obedience. Modern China's current policies are a continuation of a strategy written by these ancient ghosts. The pattern of those past disasters dictates how the state operates today. So why does the modern Chinese government aggressively suppress social dissent and demand such rigid cultural uniformity from its people? The answer traces back 2,400 years to the Warring States period. 7 kingdoms slaughtered each other for 2.5 centuries until Emperor Qin Shi Huang conquered the region. He forced everyone to use the exact same writing system, the exact same currency, and even the same axle widths for their carts. Brutal standardization was the only tool that finally stopped the bleeding. They know exactly what happens when central control slips. In 1850, a man who failed his civil service exams started a religious movement that spiraled into the Taiping Rebellion. This painting illustrates the massive scale of the violence that erupted when that massive movement tore the country apart. This chart shows the American Civil War death toll happening around the same time. It sits near 600,000. Now watch the Taiping Rebellion. The toll skyrockets to between 20 and 30 million people. Entire regions were depopulated. That trauma cemented a harsh psychological rule into the state's memory. Social chaos is infinitely worse than strict tyranny. Given the choice between freedom and absolute control, China will choose control every single time. Why does the modern Chinese state maintain such relentless surveillance over its own people and keep its military generals on such a short leash? To find the historical source of that deep paranoia, we have to look closely at the 8th century An Lushan rebellion. General An Lushan, a highly trusted military commander, turned his own army against the ruling Tang dynasty and gutted the empire from the inside out. The ensuing rebellion killed up to 36 million people, using nothing but swords and spears. It proved the most lethal threat is domestic. A country can endure foreign pressure, but a civil war will permanently destroy it. For the Chinese government, internal stability is the ultimate security metric. We see this exact same survival reflex driving modern China's hyper-aggressive pursuit of economic growth, rapid technological advancement, and military modernization. The motivation stems from what is known as the Century of Humiliation. Starting with the Opium Wars in the 1830s, Britain easily defeated Chinese forces to mandate trade. That defeat taught a harsh lesson. Thousands of years of rich culture mean absolutely nothing if you lack superior military force. This photograph shows the brutal climax of that era during the 1930s Japanese invasion. Japanese soldiers systematically searched and subjugated Chinese civilians throughout the occupation. This image captures a firing squad executing blindfolded prisoners. Somewhere between 15 and 20 million Chinese civilians died during this period, largely because the entire nation was fractured by competing, ruthless warlords. It cemented the reality that division literally equals death. Even after the Communist Party successfully unified the entire country, their rigid ideology brought its own devastating disasters. Under Mao Zedong, Decades of strict communist economics and policies like the Cultural Revolution left the nation desperately poor and starving. Then, in 1978, Deng Xiaoping took power and executed a massive pivot. He abandoned communist economic theory entirely, introducing private business and foreign investment to save his starving population, all while maintaining absolute political control. Deng proved that China's true religion is pragmatism. Ideology is merely a tool. Survival and national strength are the only metrics that matter, because historical memory dictates that weakness guarantees you will be carved up. When the Chinese Communist Party uses buzzwords like harmony, stability, and national rejuvenation, they are speaking a survival language forged directly in ancient warfare. The state institutionalizes its trauma. It takes every historic collapse, mass starvation, and humiliation and hard-codes them into modern, unbending laws. The state is focused on constructing a fortress so economically and militarily self-sufficient that no foreign power can ever inflict humiliation upon them again. Modern China is actively fleeing its ghosts. To navigate the future alongside them, the world must first understand the history China is desperately trying not to repeat.